Yeah!
Hey, good Saturday afternoon. Carl Rominger here, coming live from the WHP 580 studios, answering your legal questions. If you haven't heard the show before, I'm a real live lawyer. They cage me up every Saturday here like a hamster. Put me on the little treadmill here, and I just have to answer questions till I get off. So 540-0580, 540-0580. You call in, I'll answer them. And about half an hour into the show, we're going to be joined by Mark Virginis, I should say, and he is going to talk about all things financial, and then he's going to stay for the bonus podcast. So if you have questions and you want to line them up for Mark, think about from 2 o'clock till 3 o'clock. And, of course, if you can't do it then, you can call in at around 2:30, between 2:30 and 3:30. He's my financial guru, and we'll talk about some legal aspects of different things, but he'll be available as well. And, of course, if you have any legal question, personal injury question, a child support question, anything like that, give me a call here, 540-0580. And I just want to let everybody know I'm doing a couple things with my law office that I think you might find exciting. Is number one, I just hired a new lawyer who does a lot of business law, a lot of environmental law, trusts, but his emphasis is on business, environmental, regulatory type laws, zoning, like I say, environmental law, all kinds of things in those areas. So if you haven't used us before because you weren't sure if we handled that stuff, I've got somebody who's quite capable, and we'll hook you up. So you just look on weekendappointment.com to get the office phone number, shoot me an email, and I'll hook you up with Eric in my office. And, of course, as I already know, I've a bunch of other lawyers in the office, Vinny and Mike, who are handling all kinds of other things as well as myself. So any of us are capable of helping you. And make sure if I'm not immediately available when you call, one of the three fellas there certainly can help you. Right here, 540-0580 to talk to me here on the air. And then also, we're looking at opening locations in Lancaster and in Harrisburg. And I could use some input from the listeners. Would you prefer a downtown location, like the downtown city location in Harrisburg? We're definitely going to go downtown Lancaster near the courthouse because we get down there quite a bit to the courts, and it would be nice to have a little place to hang your hat when you're trying a case down there in Lancaster, but also so I can meet with you folks without having to drive all the way to Carlisle. But where would people prefer us to put a spot? Would you prefer it in Harrisburg City, or would you prefer it in the suburbs of Harrisburg? I'd love to hear some input on that. Shoot me an email or let me know when you call in at 540-0580 with your legal question here this afternoon. Todd, you're on WHP 580 with Carl Rominger. What's going on?
Hello.
Hi, Todd.
Hey, how's it going?
Good.
I have a question for you. I had a drop of business income this year due to the economy, and I have a child support hearing coming up this week to get the support lowered because of this.
Okay.
My question is, can I also seek to have a portion of what I paid year-to-date returned based on this new lower number? And if so, what's the proper wording I use for that?
Well, the short answer is, generally speaking, you can only go retroactive to filing. That's rule number one.
Okay.
So from the date you filed, all you have to do is just ask that you make it effective from the file date. That's the magic language. Now, here's the other thing. Number two, you might be able to go backwards if you could show and argue that you weren't aware of that drop in income. In other words, with business income, theoretically, you should be able to tell it's going to fall, but if there was an unusual expense or something that's just created a lack of profitability, you might be able to make an argument to go farther back. My experience, though, they won't.
What if I could just base it on the Obama economy, right?
Well, you can argue that. You certainly can. What they're going to say is that you were entitled to a modification as soon as you knew about it. So as soon as you knew about it, you should have filed, and that's where we're going to go with the filing date.
Gotcha. Okay. Thanks so much.
All right, Todd. 540-0580. Call in with your legal questions. Jennifer. Hey, Jennifer.
Hi there.
Hey, what's going on?
Hi.
Yeah. Oh, your cell phone's breaking up there. Shoot again.
With your employer.
I had to drop Jennifer there. We couldn't quite make her out unless that was like Howard Stern's voice calling in or something. Joseph, you're on WHP 580 with Carl Rominger. My talk line number is 540-0580. Call back, Jennifer, if you got a better connection. What's going on, Joseph?
Hey, how you doing, sir?
Good.
Hey, listen, I have a precious son who's going to be 5 in January.
Okay.
Hasn't had contact with mom since about 6 months. Since then, she's been incarcerated DUIs, maybe 3 or 4 different times. how much leverage does she have coming out once she's back in society?
Well, she has quite a bit of leverage because the courts have said that the natural parent of a child always has the standing to bring custody. So she can get into court. The question would be, what has she done as a member of society since she got out of prison, and it's going to be a very short period of time, to show that she's capable of staying sober and being an appropriate caregiver? And also there's the question of what's the child's bond with this parent at this point. And most judges are going to tell you we're not going to throw mom back into the mix heavily. There's going to have to either be a counseled reintroduction with mom or a stepped-up, carefully done reintroduction with mom, and then we'll go forward from there. And depending on how the relationship either blossoms or doesn't, give her increasing periods of custody or perhaps restrict her further.
Right. Well, at this, if she's in a work program outside of being incarcerated,
right?
Does she get a public defender automatically?
No.
In that case?
No.
Okay.
She's entitled to a criminal. There's no right to an attorney in a civil matter whatsoever. There are, however, legal services and other organizations that provide low-cost or free legal services to people who qualify with whatever criterion they use. That said, if she shows up, it might be with legal services. It might be with another low-cost legal alternative, but she's not appointed a public defender or anything like that by the courts.
Excellent. Hey, I appreciate everything.
All right, take care.
Have a good day.
All right, Joseph. 540-0580, call in with your questions. Jeannie.
Yes. Have you ever heard of this prepaid legal thing?
I have.
Is it any good?
I don't know. What do I mean by that? Like anything else in life, there's upsides and downsides to it. It does provide, my understanding is, some guaranteed rates on small legal matters. It does provide certain services like wills and traffic tickets at little or no cost to the participant. What it gives the attorney, theoretically, is access to a customer base who wouldn't otherwise use them. So, it's like anything else. If you sign up for it and it works for you, I guess it's good. My only caveat in it is because legal services are so uniquely delivered sometimes. What I mean by that is if you walk in with a traffic ticket and I know already the problem with that stop sign, let's say, it's going to be pretty simple for me to handle. Whereas if it's a complex matter, it might be much more expensive. And so it's hard, I think, to get quality legal services if the attorney's being pigeonholed too much in what they're going to be able to charge or how they can charge. The flip side is they might not have to charge as much if it wasn't a flat rate item, if they already knew what to do or who to call. So I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. I would tell you for the cost, it doesn't seem to be prohibitively expensive to try it out.
Okay.
All right?
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't have a great bead on prepaid legal one way or the other. 540-0580. I'll see you after the break. Hey, welcome back. Carl Rominger here, 540-0580. Listen, we're going to be giving away acorns here later in the show, so call in to get your free acorns. There's a surprise inside. Got them from a local judge. Anybody caught the news on that one? The judge who was handing out acorns at the Capitol stuffed with condoms. We've got a great thread going on my Facebook page about that one. Shane's looking at me like, really? You didn't know about this, Shane? No. I thought maybe you would know where you get these things. He's looking at me again. 540-0580. Call in with your questions. We'll answer them here on the air. 540-0580. Let me editorialize for a minute because we just listen. It's the political ad season, and we hear this ad says, "Oh, don't put a tax on the Marcellus gas, shale gas." Well, I'm an anti-tax guy. I don't think the government should tax any more than it has to. And it should stay out of the people's pockets. Although there's an interesting question, who's really mining this gas? Where's the money really going? And what's the problem with taxing it? And it's a little different when you have a natural resource, an extractable natural resource, which is not unlimited, which will someday disappear or be gone. Putting a tax on it does a few different things. Number one is it makes it more expensive to withdraw it, meaning it helps save that resource for longer periods of time or for the future when it may be more valuable. Number two, because it's a natural resource that's extracted from the state of Pennsylvania, it puts money back in the coffers of Pennsylvania where it belongs, rather than as profits for multinational corporations. And you hear these ads they're running where they tell you about, some farmer who's making a living. Well, listen, they're sharing peanuts. I mean, peanuts with the landowners. And the reality is they could put a 20% tax on these gas drillings up north, and it wouldn't slow it down one bit. What it would do is put some money in the state coffers, which are badly needed. But, of course, I wouldn't believe it should be in the general fund. It would be a great opportunity to take that money and put it in a fund that would fund any environmental cleanups that would need to be done. And it would be great to put some of that money in some kind of sinking fund so that the state could invest it or hold it for future use. The flip side is, as you and I know, the politicians will just spend it. So maybe my argument doesn't carry any weight. If anybody wants to weigh in on whether we should tax that gas up there or not. Remember, I'm generally an anti-tax guy, but today I'm saying we should tax it because it's an extractable natural resource, and we're not really looking at it, in my mind, as a tax so much as we're looking at it as a cost or a purchasing price of taking the resource out of the state. 540-0580, call in if you want to sound off on that. I also saw that Gene Stilp won a important victory. You can no longer stifle people when they make an ethics complaint. If I learn about an important ethics issue and I make it into a formal complaint for some reason, now I can't tell anybody else about it until they're done. So the Attorney General's office and the ethics board have lost that case, and now you can feel free to make your ethics complaint and still tell the public about what wrongdoing is taking place in government. Jennifer.
Hi there.
Okay, you're back. We got a good connection this time.
Yes. Thank you for taking my call. I have a question about a legal term that I was just told about. It's called constructive discharge, dealing with a hostile work environment.
Okay.
I guess what's happening in the office that I work at, and I'm in healthcare, is pretty much my employer is pretty much doubling my work in writing and then telling me verbally it's not really going to be that way. Also, because I called off sick one weekend, they thought it appears that they thought that I was quitting and then turned off all of my equipment. Mm-hmm. So, and it took them about 3-4 days until it was up and running again. And even now I'm having some difficulty with it. What happened just about a week or so ago was the manager in the office resigned. And because I was one of the first employees that came with her, my coworkers and I are thinking that they think everyone is going to be jumping ship, and that necessarily isn't true, but they are making it very difficult to stay.
Right. Well, there is such a thing, as constructive discharge. Just so you know, in the law, the word constructive is sort of our way of saying, well, it isn't actually that, but it's kind of like that. So I'll give you an example, constructive eviction. If I am renting you an apartment and the roof falls in and I don't fix the hole and the rain's falling on your head every night when you sleep, I may certainly say that I have a lease with you, but I've constructively evicted you because I failed to make a necessary repair, okay? Mm-hmm. And constructive discharge is basically saying they're doing things that are effectively making it so that you have to quit for a necessary, a necessitous and compelling reason, which is the terms that our good unemployment people like to use. So the problem always is it's a chicken and an egg. If you quit, they'll argue you quit. You'll argue that you were constructively discharged, and you have to be right, so to speak. You can't quit because you thought you were being constructively discharged. The question is, were you actually being? Or are we going to hold it to that standard?
Okay, well, the weekend that I called off sick, actually that weekend my job was advertised in the newspaper.
Right.
And I don't know what time they needed to get that ad in the newspaper to have it in. So in theory, they probably had it even before I called in sick mm-hmm. with a doctor's note in anticipation of me quitting. So now we're to the point where, are they really wanting me to quit? Are they doing this to get me to quit? so that they don't have to pay unemployment. Because
right, and that's what the judge at the unemployment hearing or the referee has to figure out later on is, did you quit for a necessitous and compelling reason if you up and quit? And if the answer is yes, my how do I want to say it? My boss made my life so miserable, and of course the courts have held, just one incident of misery is not enough, or one outburst by a supervisor probably isn't enough, those sorts of things. And under the current regime, best I can tell, since the state is going bankrupt paying unemployment claims, it seems like they don't want to grant anybody unemployment. So I wouldn't be surprised if right now the word's down, try to find reasons to find the discharge okay, or that the person quit willfully without a necessitous reason. So
okay.
I don't know what to tell you, Jennifer, except document, so that if you do jump ship and need to get unemployment,
right,
you've got it.
Right, and that's what I have been doing. I've been, instead of verbally communicating, I've been, emailing and getting things in writing, because now all of a sudden there's all these extra mandatory things that I need to do that I was not informed of prior to taking the position I'm in. So it's one of those things that they're slowly just adding on, and in this economy, the employers out there are, some, not all, but are really trying to push their employees to the point of breaking, because they know there is not a lot of jobs out there.
Right. Well, and that's called capitalism at a certain point, right?
Right.
But I understand, and it puts the employee in a bad position, and that's why we realize that the bargaining powers are not equal necessarily. And while you might want to push back, you might not be able to right now because there's nowhere else to go.
Now, a question: because I'm an at-will employee, and because in my employee handbook, which they just updated, they can fire anyone for any reason, just in case for whatever reason. If they don't really have a good reason, they cannot not pay you unemployment benefits.
Well, it's the state that actually pays you that, but the employer gets charged for it, a complex system. But basically, you're correct. If they just fire you, if I fire you because you have red hair, or I just don't like you anymore, or I didn't like the sneakers you wore to work that day, or whatever crazy reason a boss can come up with, that wasn't because of willful misconduct, okay?
Right.
Then, yeah, you're going to be eligible for unemployment as long as you have enough weeks in and all those sorts of things.
Right. Okay.
All right.
Well, I thank you very much for your time.
All right, Jennifer, thank you.
All right, bye-bye.
Hey, Carl Rominger here answering your legal questions here on Weekend Appointment. Mary, you're going to be up next. Hold tight for 1 second here. 540-0580. Call me your legal questions, 540-0580. Mary, you're on the air.
Hi, Carl. I've been charged with a criminal trespass, and I pled not guilty.
Okay.
I have a court date in November. The criminal trespass, I want it dismissed, basically, because it was a fraudulent charge. It was based on lies, basically.
Well, that's what courts do, is they try to figure out who's telling the truth, with the burden in a criminal case being solely on the government. But just because somebody's lying doesn't mean they won't be believed. Remember that hundreds of people are freed from wrongful incarceration every year because it turns out that witnesses lied, were mistaken, police officers planted evidence, all kinds of things.
Right. Well, I'm not saying that I didn't go on the property. I did go on the property. That's neither here nor there. But the original letter was based on a lie from a resident.
But you did have a letter telling you not to go on the property.
Correct.
And that would make out trespass or defiant trespass. Criminal trespass is actually a felony.
Well, they're saying it's a criminal trespass, but it was defiant.
Okay, so charged in the defiant subsection, which is a misdemeanor 3.
Right. But the summons that I received says criminal.
Right.
So I don't know where I stand as far as this is concerned. I've subpoenaed the records for the report, and the police department won't give me the complete report. They're telling me that the statements from the people involved are not part of the report.
Right. Now, those statements may be discoverable at the time of the hearing, but if it's a preliminary hearing, they don't have to provide them. So, So then your discovery rights don't attach until formal arraignment, which is at the county courthouse, not at the magistrate.
Right.
But Mary, you really should have an attorney helping you go through with this.
Well, the problem is I'm unemployed.
Right.
No income. Can't get anybody to represent me, and so.
Did you apply for the public defender?
No, nobody's even told me I could.
Yeah, you can. If this is there's a possibility of jail time on a charge. So if it's a misdemeanor or a felony, or even a summary.
They've given me a fee. It's a fee base.
They just told you pay a fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, that may be why they may be saying that there's no chance of jail time.
Right.
So they must be charging you under the summary version. That said, I think you could still argue that you potentially could go to jail and you might be entitled to a public defender. Pennsylvania is a little bit more generous in that regard. But yeah, otherwise, Mary, you got to just kind of bone up on the rules of criminal procedure and go from there. But whether or not the underlying letter that told you not to be there was a lie or not is irrelevant. The property owner has the absolute right to exclude you.
Okay, well, we have the neighbors are very upset because I cannot come on the property.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been told that if I am invited on the property by a resident, that there is no trespass.
That's correct.
Okay, and this is what I am being charged with. I was invited on the property.
So you need to bring the person who invited you along and have them testify that I am.
They've been subpoenaed.
Got it. Mary, I got to go to break here, but it sounds like you're on the right track. Good luck with it.
Thank you.
540-0580, 540-0580. Carl Rominger here answering your legal questions. I'll see you after the break. Hey, welcome back. Carl Rominger here, answering your legal questions. 540-0580. Hey, if you don't know the show, this is the show where they WHP 580 throws a real live lawyer, me, on the air, and I answer your legal questions. So instead of paying $75 for 15 minutes or driving to Carlisle for your free consultation or sending me an email and waiting 3 days for a response, you call in at 540-0580, and I answer it here on the air. Obviously, we can't go into super detail, and if you hear a case that sounds similar to yours, well, you shouldn't rely on that. You should come see a guy like me or run it by somebody like me, but it might give you some ideas. So you have to remember that every legal case is different, and I always like when I'm sitting in court and a guy says to me, well, he did the same thing I did. How come I have to go to jail for 90 days and he's only going to jail for 5 days? And I'm like, just listen, and you listen, and there's some little detail like, see, he didn't run anybody over. You did. Oh, I see. Like, okay. Or this is a third offense for him, lifetime, second offense for mandatories. Yours is third for lifetime and third for mandatories. Oh, I see, Carl. I see. So anyhow, every case is different. Remember that. 540-0580. Mark.
How you doing, Carl?
Good. Hey, Mark, I know you got to give a little disclaimer here, so tell us who you are and give us your magic disclaimer and get it out of the way.
Sure. Name's Mark Virginis, president of Mirus Financial Partners, financial advisor. I am an independent registered investment advisor offering securities through Financial Network Investment Corporation. Member SIPC, Mirus Financial Partners, and Financial Network are not affiliated.
Mark,
I apologize for my voice a little bit here, too. I have a little bit of a cold, so sorry.
That's okay. We booked you in advance, and I wasn't going to let you out of it just because you weren't feeling well. So thanks for being here.
No problem.
Maybe you just smoked too many cigars. Did I ever think of that?
Actually, I probably don't smoke enough. You need to keep the germs away, and just, the sulfur should help.
Maybe some scotch to go with it.
There you go.
What I'm going to do, Mark, we've got a couple callers holding. I'm going to encourage callers to call in at 540-0580. If you've got a legal question, a financial question, Mark will field the financial questions. I'll field the legal questions. And if it straddles a line, like what to do with a 401k and a divorce or something like that, we'll both chime in. Okay. Jim, you're on WHP 580 with Carl and Mark. What's going on?
Yes, Carl.
What can I do for you, Jim?
Okay, I've got a question. You're familiar with the Bank of America JP mortgage and the irregularities in the mortgage situation?
Yeah, they had one person signing 8,000 documents an hour, something along those lines?
Yes. Now, my question is, in a mortgage foreclosure action, let's say someone finds that they have a problem with the technicalities, the procedures, papers weren't put in the right way, and so forth. And you can explain both. Would you prefer the approach of a petition to open a default judgment because they didn't respond to it, or if they had a pending sheriff's sale, an emergency petition to strike or open that default judgment?
Yeah, I think you could absolutely do those things.
You like one or both, or you say either one you figure is...
I'm of the legal school of file everything you can think of that has colorable merit to make sure that you don't leave behind something that would have worked and instead find out that what you thought might work, particularly when the time frames are tight. If somebody rolls into my office and they have what looks like a negligence / strict products liability claim, I usually plead both, right? Because why leave it open to interpretation? Let's make sure that we've got the right one. So that would be my thinking on it. Also, the better documented and the more well thought out you can make it in short notice, the more likely a judge is to grant a stay.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
All right. Good luck on that. What do you think about that, Mark? All those folks with the mortgages signing all those documents.
I tell you what, it's a the mortgage crisis. We're going to be feeling this and hearing this for the next 10 years. There's going to be something along the lines here. It's just not going to clean up anytime soon. Yeah,
it's just we just had one that I'm involved in where I'm doing an estate, and the bank was going to potentially do something with the property, and then they accidentally padlocked some doors that they said they wouldn't padlock, and you just find out there's just so many properties and so many people in the left hand and the right hand that know what they're doing. So you're right.
Like what happened down here. Yeah, that's what happened down here to Pennsylvania Academy of Music. They claimed to the bankruptcy judge they couldn't get in and get the necessary forms, documents, computers that they had left behind because they were ordered to exit the property in order to get their finances in order and so forth. So they had to go back to the bankruptcy judge, and they had to beg him for a little bit more time, and then also force them to open the door so they can get their stuff.
Yeah,
it happens.
Interesting. Let's see who's next here. 540-0580. Diane, you're on with Carl and Mark.
Sorry, was that Diane?
That's you.
Hi. Yes, I was full-time gainfully employed, and after trying to become pregnant for 8 years, finally was very successful in that. After my doctor had put me on light duty because of the matured age, I was 47 at the time, I was discharged from my job for handing out a business card of my employers with my fertility doctor's name on the back of it for another couple that have been having difficulties as well. About a year after that, the father decided not to be a father anymore, had left, and I am residing with a very, very dear close friend of 20-some years. I had lost my job, and like I said, about a year later, then I felt it necessary, after being advised from several people, to file for food stamps. I disclosed all the information that they asked me for, including the household income, the whole household income at the time. Now, 3 years later, I'm being charged with fraud, food stamp fraud, and have been told that I did not disclose the entire household income, which I'm a little perplexed about, because I know I specifically did. What I'm curious about is that not only that, but the other person has also decided to have both our names put on the birth certificate after the birth of the child. He's now 3 years old. So just as we did that, it was shortly after that is when we were approached about the fraud for food stamps and I didn't know, if that was some kind of correlation, and what I should do about that.
Interesting. I don't know if there's a correlation on that or not. I do know in my dealings with these food stamp charges and welfare charges that sometimes it's a mere oversight, and that alone is not enough to get you in trouble. And sometimes you do correctly disclose information. So we've beat those many times. So I'd encourage you to come see me off the air if you want to talk about that. In terms of any linkage between the two, I couldn't tell you.
Mm-hmm.
All right?
Well, how would I get more information in speaking with you off the air?
Go to weekendappointment.com. It's weekend appointment, just like it sounds, .com, and you can get my personal contact information. You can also go on Facebook /Carl_Rominger, ROMINGER.
Okay.
All right?
All right. Thank you for your help.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, Mark, I don't know. We got to go to break here, but what can you say? I mean, I can't explain the linkage between the two, but maybe somebody just made a claim or did something. Or
Yeah, and there seems to be a lot of moving parts within that, and that you probably, as an attorney, want to talk to her confidentially.
Yeah, to figure out where everything really lies, so to speak.
There's some moving parts there.
All right, 540-0580. Mark and I will return after the break. Hey, welcome back. Carl Rominger here, 540-0580. And I want to remind you, we're going to leave the talk line open between 3 and 3:45-ish. And Mark and I will stay here and answer your questions. Of course, Mark's going to talk about financial things. I'm going to talk about legal things and where the lines blur. We'll both chime in. And I want to remind you, if you go to weekendappointment.com, you can find a link to Mark's website. Mark, what's your website again, in case somebody doesn't know how to navigate between two other websites?
Sure, it's Mirus, and that's spelled M as in Mark, IRUS, Financial Partners, and partners is plural.com, and it's all together, all one word, mirusfinancialpartners.com, and on there you can see under reading information.
Yeah.
I have a few different categories there, but the good folks at John Hancock Funds have allowed me to post downloadable PDFs for folks, so you can just go ahead and print this stuff out. I have stuff that is be prepared for emergencies, good stuff to always take and look through, 10 IRA mistakes. A lot of times folks overlook that. And then I have a brochure on there for young investors, kind of like the 1, 2, 3 for folks leaving college or done with their MBA or what have you, or getting out in the workforce. Just gives them like the 1, 2, 3 about investing and loaning and CDs versus stocks and the whole 9 yards. It's a nice, easy-to-read format.
All right, so just go check this out on your website. I did send out an email to people on Weekend Appointment that are on the list. Anybody that signed up for weekendappointment.com, you get my legal email tips, highlights from the website, things like that. And I did send them links to your site. So if you haven't checked that email, you can also find it there. Dan, you're on with Carl and Mark.
Hi, Carl. Hi, Mark. I have a question about something you were talking about earlier this week, about those DUI checkpoints. My family was in the bar and restaurant business for basically all my parents' adult life. And I read something one time, it might have been in one of the trade magazines, about state police or local police putting marks on bumpers on cars in bar parking lots that would only show up with like a black light or something of that nature, and they just parked down the road. And when a car went by with that mark that showed up, they would pull that vehicle over and check them to see if they were drunk. And the courts ruled that was not legal, not constitutional, I guess. And I'm just curious, how one is unconstitutional, the sobriety checkpoints, and this one isn't, because at least you would have some reasonable suspicion if somebody's leaving a bar that they might have had something too much to drink.
Yeah.
I did have one other question, if I could. I could hang up and listen or stay on, but you mentioned about people turning around and leaving when they see a sobriety checkpoint. I actually saw that happen, and the police raced. They broke the speed limit to chase this person down and check them. So I'm curious, if in fact that happens, is that grounds to throw out whatever they found Because you had said earlier that that's not grounds to pull somebody over because they reasonably leave the line of a
Right.
sobriety checkpoint.
Yeah, if you can prove that you reasonably left the line, or meaning that you didn't do anything illegal and didn't go through it, they can't stop you, and that should suppress anything that comes out of that stop. Of course, they always have some magic description of something you did that tends to be something that would be a potential violation of the vehicle code. Imagine that.
Mm-hmm.
That said, going back to this checkpoint thing, the checkpoints, they've said it has to be every single vehicle that comes through the area. They have to do all these other crazy things, publicity and the like. And the courts have gone through a strained analysis to find why it is constitutional.
Do you remember that? Have you ever heard about that they used to do that? They'd paint the bumpers of vehicles in bars?
I have heard about them doing that. I can tell you also, I know for a fact that they sometimes just sit by a bar, and I can think of one in Carlisle, and they sit there and they just pull people over because they saw you come out of the bar. And, of course, then they say, the affidavit of probable cause, I was on routine patrol on East Trindle Road in Carlisle when I came upon a car that I pulled over because, fill in the blank, it weaved, it dodged, it was moving too slow, it was going too fast, the headlights appeared too dim, the license plate light appeared to be out. And notice the words appeared because it doesn't have to actually be, and then they get a free check of you. So those are called pretext stops, and you can't use the fact that somebody was at a bar as a basis alone to assume that they're DUI. I guess
you want to hear the best one I ever heard?
Yeah.
My wife was pulled over because the license plate wasn't completely parallel to the ground. It was a little crooked.
Well, if you watch the DUI tape of me on my Facebook site, or you can get it on weekendappointment.com where I'm pulled over, you can hear the police carping about me beating some prior charges by them. And one of them was that my license plate was obscured by that nice thin holder that the car dealership gives you.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things they said was I had obscured my license plate. And I remember the judge looking at him like, really? Is that what you're saying, that obscured the license plate? Did you have any trouble running it as a Pennsylvania plate? I mean, was there anything about that license holder that confused you? Yeah, the judge was looking at it too, going, this is just ridiculous. Yeah, so it doesn't surprise me. And they use it as a basis because here's the deal. They don't have to be right. They just have to think that there was a violation, and that way they get to stop you, get you out of the car, smell you, sniff you, as Bob said the other day.
Yeah. It is crazy. I used to think if you had nothing to hide, then, you would submit to that. But, in today's world where, we're giving up freedoms left and right, I don't want to give up anything else.
I just wish once that everybody who got a traffic ticket, instead of just sending it in, even if you're ultimately going to pay it, don't send it in. Request the hearing. You realize that if everybody requested the hearing who got a traffic ticket in a given week, the courts couldn't even get through all of them in a year. You could just shut the entire system down.
I even think it's intrusive now that you go to some of these box stores and they will check you. They'll check you out at the register and then check you again as you leave, just to make sure that you're not stealing.
Well, yeah, but those guys, I know what their problem is that merchandise flies off the shelf and out the door without getting paid for. And, of course, they work on such a thin margin that they don't need to lose much merchandise. So I give them a little bit. But here's the deal. They're private industry, okay?
Right.
So if they get too intrusive, we'll all go shop somewhere else.
Exactly.
Government we're stuck with. Thanks, Dan.
Thank you.
540-0580. I hate to cut Dan short there, Mark, but we got more callers here. And I want to remind people that Mark and I are going to continue to take your calls, so you can keep calling at 540-0580 from 3 o'clock until a little after 3:45, and we'll be here to talk with you. And that'll go up as the bonus podcast and be replayed on the ticket tomorrow. Mary, what's going on?
Yeah, hi, Carl. A little over a year ago, I was named as a beneficiary in the estate of my best friend. And I never received any paperwork other than a letter with a check. I was told right after her death that I was to receive, X amount of money by one of the family members the day after her death. And, true to that, about 3-4 months later, I received that amount. Now, I have never went to any kind of a reading of the will, and not that I found out, but her mother said to me the other day that all this percentage business is really because of the charities she donated to. This percentage business is messing everything up. And I said, what do you mean? She said that, this friend of mine left everything in her will as a percentage. Mm-hmm. And that was the first I'd heard of that.
Yeah, and I don't know what you could do. You could just go to the courthouse and look at the will.
I can do that?
Yes, you can.
Because if it's just, I don't want to, I'm not trying to make waves, but...
Well, but they're not gonna say anything at the courthouse. People go up and look at files all day long, every day. So
okay.
you just go up there, you look, and if it's confusing, you come see a guy like me. We'll look it over, make sure you got your share. If it's straightforward and it looks like you got close to your share, nobody has to even know you second guessed them.
Okay, now would it be on file in any courthouse, or do I have to go to the county of?
You have to go to the county where it happened, yeah.
Okay, and then what if the estate is not yet settled?
Well, the will should still be filed. Once the estate's settled, there'll be an accounting file, which will show you everything that's done as well.
Okay, so I could just go to this courthouse and look up the will on record, and I'll be able to know exactly what that will says.
Right, and then you'll be able to tell if they were actually doing it. Of course, what you won't know from the will is how much money was actually there.
Right, yeah.
All right, got to let you go. Folks, 540-0580. We're going to keep taking your calls. So if you're holding now, keep on holding. We'll go to the bonus podcast edition. In the meantime, hey, folks, I just got myself an environmental lawyer in the office, regulatory lawyer, all kinds of stuff. Look us up at weekendappointment.com, weekendappointment.com. You can get the contact information for me. In the meantime, 540-0580.